Is Neopets a 24-year-old crypto bro? Because it's fiddling around with the blockchain again and expects us all to think that is very cool. If you're out of the loop, Neopets is launching NFTs on the Solana blockchain, and it's called the Neopets Metaverse collection. If you're even more than out of the loop, you're out of context of everything that I'm talking about, I would more than happily explain the blockchain to you if we were at person in a bar. It's a great conversation to have in a bar, but on YouTube, there are plenty of great resources that walk through what the blockchain is and what NFTs are.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about blockchain technology and give you a high-level overview of what it is and how it works.
The foundational elements that you need for this video are that NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are tradable, unique assets that can only be owned by one user at a time. There is a limited number of them, and a blockchain is a secure method of trading resources, data, that is tracked globally and also locally. I totally recommend watching a computer file video or two if you would like to understand a little bit more of the fundamentals, but for the sake of this video, that's all you need to know. The Neopets team and the Solana team did their jobs. They sent out the press releases, and on September 23rd, 2021, we saw a wave of stories, articles, sources describing the launch of the Solana blockchain Neopets NFT called the Neopets Metaverse collection. In response to this wave of coverage, we saw a conversation sprout out on Reddit, on Neopets the Neoboards, and also on Twitter. This conversation could be described as contentious. In this situation, we have a broad table, which is the conversation about the Neopets Metaverse collection NFT launch through Solana, and the parties are arriving to the conversation from various different standpoints. We have, I don't know, maybe 4 different parties coming to the table. We have people who really love Neopets, who've been playing Neopets for the last 20 years, who have a deep understanding of the game and its cultural role. Then we have people who have some familiarity with Neopets, who know that it is a 90s brand, who are excited that Neopets is taking this foray into crypto. Then we have people who are skeptical of NFTs from one of 2 perspectives. They're skeptical of the implications it has for art ownership and the ethics of creating digital art. The other group that is skeptical are environmental activists or environmental-minded folk who are skeptical of NFTs from the perspective of the implications it has for the environment to data mine crypto. Those are the different parties that are coming to the table to discuss this launch. Part of the reason why people who are very involved with Neopets are skeptical about this instead of champions of this is because 3 years ago, Neopets did this same venture with a different crypto technology. Let's talk a little bit about the last time that Neopets did this. In October of 2018, Neopets launched Crpytoquest with the partner Rarebits, which was owned by the company Fanbits. And what this was a digital trading card game where users could put money into a virtual wallet, buy virtual trading cards, and they also got a code that they could enter on neopets.com, redeem the code for Neopoints and items. In May of 2018, Fanbits stopped posting all content to their social media, and now those digital trading cards are inaccessible to anybody who purchased them. I have a personal tie to this story. In September of 2018, Fanbits reached out to me. We had several calls, emails, discussing the particulars of me promoting this concept. I haven't spoken about this publicly because the outcome of our conversations was me recognizing that this wasn't a good business decision. For me, I did not think it was ethical. I thought it was a cash grab. It had no ties back to the Neopets website. What does that mean? Yes, you got a code that you could redeem on neopets.com to get items and Neopoints, but in no way was it logged on your Neopets user page. No way was it tied back to any pets. From a fandom perspective, I recognized that it was a non-canon game development. It had no functional tie back to the game. And then on top of that, it had very little mentions on the Neopets website. I realized that I would be exchanging some capital from my personal reputation as a blogger if I covered this. They offered me $250 for a 4-minute video, which would have been a pretty good deal, but I thought that it would just be unethical for me to release a video promoting Crpytoquest when it so clearly to me was a poorly thought out venture that existed to get money from Neopets players. All of that history is great, but this is an entirely different project. It's a different technology. Why are the Neopets users still upset about it? I think we could tie this back to a phrase that I used to hate. I know a lot of you are probably gonna gag a little bit when I say it, but let's talk about thought leadership or strategic decision making for a second. I always used to think that this was a phrase that meant nothing. That was just something that people with suit jackets said to feel smart in a room. But it became very clear to me the further I got along with my career in marketing when a company does not have good thought leadership. Let's talk about an example of great thought leadership. If you're a 90s baby, you're probably familiar with Lisa Frank. You know, trapper keepers of dolphins and rainbows and aliens with hearts. It's a bright colored, beautiful brand that was very chuggy and nostalgic for people who were children in the 1990s. Lisa Frank understands the assignment. They showed up and they decided they were going to launch makeup, nail polish, because that's what people who were children in the 90s want now as adults from that brand. Lisa Frank has great thought leadership. They know exactly where they should position themselves for their consumers. It makes sense. I want to consume it. People around me want to consume it. People get excited. They share it. It's resonating with their target audience. It aged up with the target audience. The Neopets team shared a little bit about their thought leadership in making this decision in a statement on the Neopets boards. Here's what they had to say. Jumpstart is always looking for new opportunities to drive our brands and product forward into the future. We are constantly seeking new ways for players to engage with us, and we see NFTs as a potential opportunity for the company in this regard. We are going to learn new things on this journey and want to encourage everyone to keep sharing their thoughts and feedback with us as we go so we can improve and adjust accordingly. The idea being presented here is the Neopets team is trying to drive engagement with the brand, and the NFTs are a way to drive engagement with the brand. This makes me wonder, is it just that they want to show up in more conversations? Because they did this by releasing all those press releases and getting on Twitter and Reddit with this narrative that Neopets is just now, for the first time, trying crypto. It is making a stir. It is driving engagement, but it's not driving engagement with the core user base. The thought leadership is not to further develop brand loyalty with the current user base. It's to drive engagement overall, which means that they're not speaking to their audience. They're speaking outside of their audience. That seems to be the thought leadership here. The idea that they're just trying to cultivate engagement. From the perspective of a social media marketer, engagement is a very compelling metric. However, I think that cultivating retention is pretty important when you're trying to drive long-term success of a brand. I would rather focus my efforts on retention than engagement with users who don't resonate with your main form of gameplay, which is browser-based virtual pet game. If you're driving engagement with people who will never play the game, who will never participate in the world that you've built, the currently existing developed revenue model, then is that engagement really worth it? If Lisa Frank did it right and Neopets did it wrong, what are my suggestions for collaborations that would do a little bit more brand stewardship and slot in with the demographic that consumes Neopets natively and their interests? I think some of the jewelry that they're producing is good. Unfortunately for me, it's just not a direct hit. The most recent wave was pretty good, but I don't see myself purchasing it at this time. Just I think the cost number is off. Something that I think that would work really well, because people that play Neopets would love this, because they're doing it with Animal Crossing, because they're doing it with Star Wars, and the people who go to this place are the same age, income as the people who really like Neopets. Build-A-Bear. Before you say, Julie, Build-A-Bear's for children, I actually did the marketing for Build-A-Bear for a while. Like, I worked with Build-A-Bear for like a year, and I worked on developing a content series for them for YouTube at my place of employment. I've been to Bear Quarters, I've reported on the numbers. Build-A-Bear knows that there is an adult fan base that loves to interact with their fandom by building bears. Build-A-Bear is filling a niche kind of like Lego, in the sense that they are a licensing partner where you can put your content for people to interact with it that are super fans. And they've released adult bear content for adult fans. So it's not like weird risque, but it's like funny fun for young adults who have disposable income, who are into fandoms. So why doesn't Neopets just explore a partnership with Build-A-Bear? It's never made sense to me that this isn't happening, especially when the biggest demand for the audience is that Neopets releases more stuffed animals. It seems to me that this would be the easiest way to get stuffed animals in as many people's hands as possible, is by releasing Neopets at Build-A-Bear. I don't want to come across as dense. I know why we don't see a partnership at Build-A-Bear, but we do see 2 crypto attempts. It's because one is free and low risk and generates a lot of buzz, while the other demands difficult corporate partnerships, contracts, fronting money, doing research. One is a lot harder than the other, and everyone can tell. It's obvious that the reason why Neopets is moving forward with this crypto partnership is because it's easy and requires no work from Neopets, and they're getting some sort of licensing money out of it. It's easy, it's dirty, and it looks that way. One of the most embarrassing ways that this comes across cheap and dirty and easy for Neopets to do is the fact that the promotional content for the NFTs are these pictures of Neopets that are randomly generated with a random pose, color, species, and clothing. And we're supposed to get the impression that these will be examples of NFTs that are granted to people who participate in the Neopets Metaverse. I think it's curious, a lot of these show smiling Neopets, but we've been told that the expression will actually be randomly generated, and I wonder why they wouldn't advertise unhappy looking Neopets. Maybe they're less pleasant to consider acquiring, but that's not the point. The point is that they don't appear to have gotten those images. The Neopets Metaverse doesn't seem to have received those images directly from the Neopets team, and if they did, the Neopets team used a fan site to generate those images. Well, what are you talking about? According to the Neopets pet page, Scrogs, pet page is like a website hosted on neopets.com, and users can author them. It's a great way to disseminate information. This one is dedicated to the NFT story, and they log this as a controversy, which is that soon after launch, users noticed that one of the sample NFTs images shown on the Neopets Metaverse, a dimensional Kugra, did not look the way it looks on the Neopets site. Shown below comparison between the two. You could see that there is a standard dimensional Kugra, the way it looks on the site on the right, and then on the left, weird, that's not the official artwork that's been released. A quirk of classic Dress to Impress, the Neopets fan site that mirrors the Neopet customization tool, is that it includes image versions as alternatives to the native Flash assets that existed prior to HTML5 conversion. Because these images are generated by DTI, it flattens the images for dimensional pets, causing them to look slightly different. So the visual effect that we see on the left is only native to Dress to Impress. If it would have been generated by Neopets, they would have gotten something that looked more like the right. So this artwork was sourced from a fan site a fan site that does not support the NFT launch. The Neopets team didn't even provide artwork for the sample NFTs. That's how cheap and easy and dirty this is. It required no effort from the Neopets team. Another feather in the cap that this is just a quick, easy, cheap partnership is the fact that Neopets apparently did not internally communicate this partnership with the different stakeholders, like for instance, the person who ran the official Neopets Twitter account. So somebody reached out and said, hey, is this a real/official with Jumpstart, or is it somebody scamming? And they linked to the neopetsmetacollection.com, and there was an automated response. And then after that, the person who managed the Neopets Twitter said, I believe that is a scam. And it's frustrating for me to see this because it feels like there should be some sort of internal checks and balances that like everybody at the company is aligned with something, because clearly this person thought it was a scam from looking at it. That doesn't bode well for a partnership if at least one person at the company says like, hey, isn't this a scam? Because that person is in touch with what the people are saying, which is, hi, yes, this is scammy. All right, but let's circle back, because if you remember our table, we have the avid Neopets users for the last 2 decades who are upset, and I feel like I've kind of addressed some of their concerns, but I haven't really addressed the concerns of those 2 skeptics. The skeptic that does not believe that NFTs are good for art ethics, and then the skeptics who don't think that NFTs are good for the environment. And I'm not necessarily an expert in either of these, nor do I carry these perspectives. However, I do think that I could shed some light on what's going on here. NFTs commodify art, and that's one of the reasons why TTI opposes them. I don't have a horse in that race. You know, there's lots of people who have perspectives on that, and I respect that, and if that is the sword you carry, then like may you wield it well. The other skeptical perspective that I've identified is that NFTs are harmful to the environment. The Neopets team does defend the use of the Solana blockchain because it is a less environmentally impactful alternative. The reason why I don't think it's fair for me to make a strong point on this topic is because I've traded crypto for years, and for me, I don't think it would reflect integrity for me to say something condemning this or supporting this. It doesn't seem right. I understand that this is a major issue for people and that this is a cleaner alternative. You know, the skepticism there is like, well, wouldn't like the greenest alternative not be consuming energy? And that's a good question. Wouldn't it be greener to just not do this thing? That's a good perspective. The Neopets team thinks that they've handled this adequately, and you know, that's up to you. In my opinion, the naming of this project gives a little bit of insight and understanding about the culture in which a project like this gets greenlit. So the name is the Neopets Metaverse Collection. And those words, they're fine words. None of them are on face value offensive. But there's that word right in the middle that kind of makes us think, like, what's going on here? So, metaverse. This is a nonsense buzzword when it's being used the way it is. It's completely interchangeable with the word internet here. It's not taking advantage of any of the understanding that is provided with the shortcut word metaverse. You could swap it with virtual or digital or internet and it means the exact same thing. So why did they use the word metaverse? Where is this coming from? What's going on here? So if you've unfortunately been subjected to the film or the book Ready Player One, you may be familiar with the headset, immersive environment, pervasive game that is the primary method in which users or people consume, work, and study. And this is a form of metaverse. This term was coined in the book Snow Crash, which I read earlier this year. I read it because the biggest world genius, boy wonder, Mark Zuckerberg, announced over the summer of 2021 that he thinks that the metaverse is the future of social media and that it is Facebook's responsibility to develop the metaverse. So metaverse started trending. It entered the lexicon. I used to make jokes with my friends when I was a digital nomad that the best way to get a startup funded in Silicon Valley was to just throw a bunch of buzzwords in it that don't make sense. I think this is a pretty common joke that a lot of people make. So some of those words include blockchain, crypto, right? So it appears as though metaverse is now one of those nonsense, you don't really have to prove that you're actually doing it type of words in order to get greenlit. And because it's a buzzword that Mark Zuckerberg is throwing around, it gets greenlit when it's actually not relevant. Like I said, you could use the word digital, virtual, or internet in the same place, and it would mean the same exact thing. Because what they're really saying is that it's on a blockchain, that it's stored virtually, and that it's logged in such a way that it cannot just be deleted in an instance from one person's computer. It's not a metaverse, and also, it doesn't matter if it is. It doesn't add anything to the entire conversation. It's just a buzzword and it's being used in a way that doesn't make any sense. I bring this up because my worst fear is that somebody who doesn't really understand the technology was kind of like hoodwinked or swindled into it by fancy buzzwords, and that makes me really uncomfortable. But more likely than that is that the way that it is packaged and titled is to appeal to the consumer and not to the business making decision makers at neopets.com. So hopefully they saw through this and they weren't swayed by the fancy talk of metaverses in the instance where one is not being evoked. Last night when I decided to make this video, I posted a poll to my YouTube and I asked, what are your thoughts or concerns about the Neopets NFTs? Feel free to answer the poll and also comment. Please share questions you have on the topic too. Of 243 responses, 1% was I love it, 7% was I'm skeptical, 60% was I'm very against the situation, and 32% was I have no idea what's going on. I wanted to go over some of the questions or concerns that people have because I think it's worth addressing some of them straight on, and also because I really appreciate you guys commenting. One of the concerns that I see addressed is that they're afraid that the Neopets team is not actually bringing back UCs, but are instead going to release UCs as NFTs. That's definitely not the case. So the Neopets team has been pretty clear that this is a separate team running this, and I definitely believe that. So what's probably happening here is that the Solana team, they have like a little marketing department that goes out and sells partnerships, does licensing deals, and they are doing all of the work, right? There is like 2 or 3 maybe people at the Neopets team who are tasked with like responding to emails and like getting assets or like answering questions, but they're not doing any heavy lifting. They're not doing any work. There's nobody on the Neopets team that is doing any software engineering or doing any heavy lifting on this project. Don't worry about that. Like the Neopets UC situation, totally different, not the same. A lot of people are saying that they're bummed out that Neopets is going with this to increase revenue instead of doing something else. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there are conversations about Neopets releasing more plushies and stuffed animals. Why haven't they done it? Why don't they just do that instead of this? The answer is because it takes a long time to develop and distribute merch. And unfortunately, like that's the reality. It takes a really long time to do that, and this is easy in the way that it is packaged and brought to Neopets, and all Neopets has to do is say, yes, let's do it. You know, it's not like Neopets went out and pitched to this company brought it to Neopets, and it is passing up on free money if Neopets doesn't go forward with it. Like, part of me is like, should the Neopets team just cancel and not do this? And I just would not want them to actually lose money canceling the contract because like it's going to fizzle out in like 2 or 3 months if it launches. because I don't see it having a long-term viability, right? It's not tied back to the game in the canon way that dedicated users will support. As soon as the immediate buzz around the launch dies down, people aren't going to be interested anymore. So I'm not too worried about the long-term viability of the project. I'm more so worried about Neopets doing the damage control right now. I mean, when they make as many bad decisions as they do, they're well versed in damage control, or at least they should be. But we'll see what happens. That was all shade. Well, it turns out that 30 minutes of ranting is all I have to say about this. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I filmed this like in my free time throughout the day. I'm like neck deep in another video that I really want to finish, that like I'm really excited about. And so last night when I was like, oh, this is really big, I actually have a lot of feelings, I was like, okay, one day, I get one day to work on this video and it can't interrupt any of my other videos. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had to put it together like pretty quickly because this is, a pretty fast project. It's like a pretty fast current topic to discuss, so I wanted to get it out there for you guys. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope not that much changes between now and upload, but if it does, like, that's probably a good thing. I mean, if there's an update that makes this video irrelevant, that's a good thing. A video coming out next week that I'm really excited about, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. As I mentioned in this video, I've got some strong opinions about Mark Zuckerberg. Right now I'm reading Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO of Facebook. And since starting to read it, I've become even less of a fan of Mark Zuckerberg. So if you'd like to hear more about that, I will be releasing a video about Lean In eventually. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. If you comment something mean, I will delete it and probably block you. But otherwise, have a nice day.